My name is Felicia, and I'm 60 years old. My daughter sold my late husband's old cottage, the one he spent 15 years building with his bare hands, just to take her husband to the UK. 15 years. Do you understand what that means? 15 years of sweat, of blistered hands, of weekends sacrificed, of dreams whispered into reality brick by brick. And she sold it. Like it was nothing. Like it was just another transaction, another line item on a bank statement. The day I found out there was a change of ownership, she said, I sold it for something important. My husband wanted to relocate. Important. That word still rings in my ears like a slap. Was my husband's life work not important? The place where we planned to grow old together, where we were supposed to watch sunsets and count our blessings, that wasn't important? But Daniel's career move, his ambitions, his dreams of fancy London offices, that was important? I was devastated. No, devastated doesn't even come close. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out what was left of my heart. Richard had been gone only 8 months. 8 months. His coffee mug was still in the cupboard. His reading glasses were still on the nightstand. His scent still lingered on his favorite chair. And now his cottage, our cottage, is gone too. Until the dealer called and said, "Your husband left some of his properties here. You need to come now." Properties. Plural. My hand shook as I held the phone. What was he talking about? What properties? Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe. We're building a community that proves our best chapters can still begin at any age. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the days after Richard died, because you need to understand what that cottage meant to me. You need to understand what was stolen from me. 8 months. It had been 8 months since I buried my husband, and every single day felt like drowning. You know that feeling when you wake up and for just one beautiful second, you forget? You forget that they're gone, and then reality crashes down on you like a wave, and you have to learn all over again that they're never coming back? That was my life. Every single morning. I'd wake up reaching for him, and my hand would find empty sheets. Cold sheets. I'd make breakfast and set out 2 plates before I remembered. I'd hear a sound in the garage and think, oh, that's Richard, before the silence reminded me that no, it wasn't. It would never be Richard again. The cottage was all I had left of him. That beautiful countryside cottage that he built with his own 2 hands. Do you know how rare that is? How special? In this world of prefabricated everything, of contractors and subcontractors, my Richard built us a home. Board by board. Nail by nail. Window by window. I can still see him out there, early morning mist rising off the fields, his tool belt slung low on his hips, whistling while he worked. Always whistling. He had this old tune he'd hum, something his father taught him, and whenever I heard it, I knew everything was right in the world. Everything was exactly as it should be. The cottage sat on 3 acres of the most beautiful land you've ever seen. Rolling hills, ancient oak trees, a little creek that babbled and sang in the spring. Richard used to say the land chose us, not the other way around. We'd been driving past it for years on our way to visit his sister, and one day he just pulled over, got out of the car, and stood there staring at this overgrown, forgotten piece of earth. "This is it," he said. Just like that. "This is where we're going to retire, Felicia. This is where we're going to spend the rest of our lives." I thought he was crazy. We were in our 40s, still raising Lisa, still paying mortgages and car payments and college tuition. Retirement was a distant dream, something other people did, people with money and time and luck we didn't have. But Richard was determined. He bought that land with money he'd saved from overtime shifts, from skipped lunches, from saying no to 1,000 little pleasures so he could say yes to this one big dream. Our dream. And then he started building. Every weekend for 15 years, he was out there. Rain or shine, summer heat or winter frost, my husband was building our future. He'd leave Friday night after work and come back Sunday evening, covered in sawdust and dirt and pure joy. Sometimes I'd go with him. I'd pack a picnic basket, bring a book, and just sit there watching him work. Watching him create something out of nothing. Watching him build us a home. The porch, oh God, that porch. He built it wide and deep, with sturdy railings and a gentle slope so we could rock in our chairs and watch the world go by. He installed a porch swing, painted it blue because he knew that was my favorite color. He carved our initials into the main support beam, our +F, surrounded by a heart. Corny, maybe, but it was us. It was real. It was forever. The smell of pine was everywhere. Fresh cut wood, sawdust in the air, the sharp scent of varnish and paint. Even now, months after his death, if I closed my eyes I could smell it. I could smell him, his sweat and his aftershave and the coffee he'd drink from that old thermos, the one with the dent in the side. His tools were still by the shed. I couldn't bring myself to move them. His hammer, his saw, his level, all sitting there like he might come back any minute and pick up where he left off. Like death was just a lunch break, and he'd be back to finish the job. The birds sang there like nowhere else. Mourning doves and cardinals and little wrens that nested in the eaves. Richard used to say they were singing for us, celebrating our dream. I'd laugh and call him silly, but secretly I believed it too. Those birds knew. They knew that cottage was special. They knew it was built on love. But it wasn't just property. It wasn't just wood and nails and paint. It was a memory. It was a legacy. It was every sacrifice, every hope, every whispered promise we made to each other in the dark. Someday, we'd say. Someday we'll sit on that porch and grow old together. Someday we'll wake up to those birds and have nowhere to be but together. Someday. Except someday never came. Not for Richard. He died 3 months before his retirement party. 3 months before we were supposed to move into that cottage full-time. 3 months before our someday was supposed to begin. A heart attack. Sudden. Vicious. No warning, no chance to say goodbye, no time to tell him one more time that he was my everything. And now, 8 months later, I was living in our old house in the city, surrounded by memories but not the ones I wanted. Not the ones we'd planned. The cottage sat empty, waiting. Waiting for a dream that would never come true. My daughter, Lisa. God, where do I even start with Lisa? She'd always been ambitious. Driven. Smart as a whip and twice as sharp. We were so proud of her, Richard and I. She got her MBA, landed a job at a consulting firm, married Daniel, this smooth-talking, good-looking man with big plans and bigger promises. At first, we liked him. He was charming, attentive, and said all the right things. He'd help Richard with projects at the cottage, bring expensive wine to dinner, and compliment my cooking. But over time, something shifted. He became restless. Always talking about opportunities, about moving up, about how they were wasting their potential in this small town. That's what he called our home. A small town. Like it was something to be ashamed of. Like the place where Lisa grew up, where she had family and friends and roots, wasn't good enough for his grand ambitions. After Richard died, Lisa changed. Or maybe I just finally saw what had been there all along. She became distant. Distracted. She'd visit, but her mind was always somewhere else. She'd check her phone constantly, take calls in the other room, leave early with some excuse about work or Daniel or errands that couldn't wait. I told myself she was grieving. That everyone grieves differently. That she'd come back to me eventually, that we'd hold each other up through this nightmare like mothers and daughters are supposed to do. I was wrong. It started with little comments. Casual, almost throwaway observations that felt like test balloons. Mom, this house is too big for you now. Mom, have you thought about downsizing? Mom, the cottage is just sitting there empty. That's not very practical. Practical. Like love needs to be practical. Like legacy can be measured in square footage and property taxes. I'd shut her down every time. The cottage is staying in the family. It's what your father wanted. It's what we both wanted. But she kept pushing. And I started to notice Daniel in the background of these conversations, nodding, agreeing, adding his own pointed comments about market values and investment opportunities and not letting emotions cloud good financial sense. Financial sense. That's what they called my marriage. My memories. My husband's 15 years of labor and love. Financial sense. I should have seen it coming. God, why didn't I see it coming? The mail came on a Tuesday. Isn't it funny how the worst moments of your life always seem to happen on such ordinary days? Not during a storm or an eclipse or some dramatic moment. Just a regular Tuesday morning, with coffee brewing and birds singing and the world turning like nothing was wrong. I saw the envelope. Official looking. County clerk's office. Property transfer documents. My hand shook as I opened it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was just some bureaucratic error, some paperwork that needed updating after Richard's death. Maybe. But no. There it was. Clear as day. Transfer of ownership. The cottage. Richard's cottage. Our cottage. Sold. Transferred to new owners. The closing date has already passed. The room started spinning. I had to sit down. I couldn't breathe. This had to be wrong. This had to be some kind of mistake because there was no way, no possible way, that cottage was sold without my knowledge. I owned it. Richard had made sure of that. The deed was in both our names, and when he died, it became mine. Mine alone. So how? How was this possible? And then I remembered. Last year, when Richard was sick, not dying sick, just a bad flu that laid him up for a week, he'd signed some papers. Power of attorney papers. Just in case, he said. Just so Lisa can help you with things if anything ever happens to me. We'd both signed them. Both added Lisa's name. It seemed smart at the time, practical, responsible. We were getting older. These things needed to be in place. I never thought she'd use them against me. My phone was in my hand before I even realized I'd grabbed it. I called Lisa. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Again. 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 Finally, on the 6th call, she picked up. Mom, I'm at work. Can this wait? Can this wait? Like my world wasn't ending. Like my heart wasn't being ripped from my chest. Lisa. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely speak. What's this? Why is your father's cottage listed as sold? Silence. Long, terrible silence. Mom. Her voice had that tone. That careful, measured, I'm dealing with a difficult person tone that made my blood run cold. Please don't overreact. Don't overreact. Don't overreact. Lisa, what did you do? I heard her sigh. Actually sigh, like I was being unreasonable. Like I was the problem here. We needed the money. Daniel got an opportunity in the UK. It was for our future. The words hit me like physical blows. We needed the money. For our future. Not my future. Not Richard's legacy. Not the family we were supposed to be. Their future. Hers and Daniel's. That cottage, I couldn't even finish the sentence. Rage and grief and disbelief were choking me. Mom, please. Let me explain. Explain? Explain what? How did you sell your father's life work without even telling me? How you took the one thing I had left of him and Dad's gone. Her voice was sharp now, defensive. He's gone, Mom. The cottage was just sitting there. We needed. Just sitting there? Just sitting there? I was screaming now. I never scream. I'm not a screamer. But this rage, this betrayal, this absolute destruction of everything I thought I knew about my daughter. Your father spent 15 years building that cottage. 15 years, Lisa. Do you remember? Do you remember the weekends he spent out there instead of at your soccer games, instead of at your piano recitals, because he was building something for all of us? Do you remember how proud he was when he finally finished it? How he couldn't wait to retire there, to have you and your future children visit, to create new memories in the place he built with his bare hands? I know, Mom, but nothing. He's only been gone 8 months. 8 months, Lisa, and you couldn't even wait a year? You couldn't even give me 1 full year to grieve before you destroyed the last piece of him I had? It wasn't personal. Not personal? How is this not personal? This was your father's dream. Our dream. And you sold it. You sold it for Daniel. For his opportunity. For his dreams. What about your father's dreams? What about mine? Another sigh. God, that sigh. Like I was being exhausted. Like I was the villain in this story. Mom, I'm sorry you're upset, but this was a good financial decision. The cottage needed work. It was going to cost money to maintain. Money you don't have. I don't care about the money. Well, you should. You're 60 years old, widowed, on a fixed income. Don't you dare. Don't you dare make this about protecting me. This isn't about me. This is about you and Daniel and your selfish ambitions. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to sell my husband's legacy behind my back? Was it fair to use the power of attorney he gave you, that we gave you, to betray us like this? Silence again. Then, quietly, I did what I thought was best. And that's when I broke. Not with screaming. Not with rage. With something much worse. With silence. With the awful, terrible realization that my daughter, my only child, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers and cheered at graduations, was gone. The person on the other end of the phone was a stranger. Someone I didn't know. Someone I didn't want to know. Don't call me again, I whispered. Don't come to the house. Don't. Mom. I hung up. My chest was tight. Too tight. I couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. Everything Richard and I had built, not just the cottage, but our family, our legacy, our love, was crumbling. Turning to dust. And I was powerless to stop it. That night was the longest of my life. Longer even than the night Richard died, because at least then I had shock to numb me. I had disbelief. I had the merciful fog of grief that softens the edges of reality. But this? This was clear. This was sharp. This was knowing, with absolute certainty, that I'd been betrayed by the person I loved most in this world. I couldn't stay in the house. I couldn't be surrounded by photos of Lisa as a child, by memories of birthday parties and Christmas mornings and all the moments that now felt like lies. Has she always been this person? This cold, calculating stranger who could sell her father's dream for a plane ticket to London? I drove to the cottage. I don't even remember getting in the car. I just needed to be there. Needed to see it one more time before it was really, truly gone. The night was cold. November cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes you believe winter will last forever. The headlights cut through the darkness as I turned down the long gravel drive. My drive. Richard's drive. The drive he'd laid himself, stone by stone, because he wanted it to last, to be there for our grandchildren and their grandchildren. Grandchildren who would never know this place. Who would never play in that creek or climb those oak trees or sit on that porch swing with their grandmother and hear stories about the man who built it all. The cottage looked lonely in the moonlight. Empty. Abandoned. Like it knew what had happened. Like it was morning too. I got out of the car and just stood there, breathing in the cold air, the smell of pine and earth and everything that was Richard. The porch light was off, of course it was, because I wasn't living there, wasn't there to flip the switch, and the darkness felt appropriate. It felt right. Everything was dark now. Everything was cold. I walked around to the side of the house, where Richard's hand-painted sign still hung, the Bennett Cottage, built with love. Built with love. I reached up and touched it, traced the letters he'd painted so carefully, and that's when I broke. Not with gentle tears. Not with quiet sobs. With ugly, gasping, body-shaking grief that came from somewhere so deep I didn't even know it existed. I fell to my knees in the dirt, the same dirt Richard had walked on, had worked in, had loved, and I screamed. I screamed at God, at fate, at the cruel universe that takes good men too soon and turns daughters into strangers. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I had nothing left. And then I just cried. I clutched that sign to my chest like it was Richard himself, like if I held it tight enough I could bring him back, could undo all of this, could wake up and find it was all just a horrible nightmare. But I couldn't. This was real. This was my life now. Richard was gone. The cottage was gone. Lisa was gone. Everything was gone. I don't know how long I stayed there, kneeling in the dirt. Long enough for the cold to seep through my clothes, for my knees to go numb, for the moon to move across the sky. Long enough to remember. I remembered the day Richard brought me here for the first time. We'd been married 20 years, and he'd been so nervous, so excited to show me the land he'd bought. He'd led me through the overgrown grass, pointing out where everything would be, the cottage here, the garden there, the porch facing east to catch the sunrise. It's perfect, I'd said, even though I couldn't really see it. Even though it was just dirt and weeds and wild dreams. It will be, he'd promised. Give me time, Felicia. I'll build us something beautiful. And he had. God, he had. Every board, every nail, every window, and door and shingle was chosen with love, placed with care, built to last forever. I remembered the day he finished the porch. He'd called me, his voice crackling with excitement over the phone, come see. Come see me right now. I'd driven out there to find him standing on that porch, grinning like a little boy on Christmas morning. He'd swept me up in his arms, dancing me around, whistling that old tune. This is it, he'd said. This is where we're going to grow old, Felicia. Right here, in this spot, watching the world go by. I remembered summer evenings spent out here, before he finished the interior, when it was just framing and potential. We'd bring lawn chairs and sit inside the skeleton of our future home, planning where furniture would go, what color to paint the walls, what kind of curtains I'd make. I remembered the first time Lisa visited the cottage. She must have been 12 or 13, that awkward age where everything her parents did was embarrassing. But even she had been impressed. Even she had seen the magic in what her father was creating. It's really cool, Dad, she'd said, and Richard had beamed. He pulled her into a hug and said, someday this will be yours, sweetheart. Someday you'll bring your kids here, and you can tell them how your old man built it with his bare hands. Someday. There was that word again. The word that haunted me. The word that promised a future that never came. I remembered the last time Richard and I were here together. 3 weeks before he died. He didn't know he was dying, of course. None of us did. He was just working on some final touches, installing new cabinet hardware in the kitchen, talking about all the dinners we'd cook there, all the holidays we'd host. Next Thanksgiving, he'd said. Next Thanksgiving, we'll have the whole family here. We'll cook a turkey in this kitchen, and Lisa can bring Daniel, and maybe by then there'll be a grandkid or two running around. Won't that be something, Felicia? Won't that be just perfect? I'd agreed. I'd believed him. I'd let myself dream of that future, that perfect Thanksgiving, that life we were supposed to have. 3 weeks later, he was gone. And now the cottage is gone too. I pulled myself up from the ground, still clutching the sign. My body ached. My knees were muddy. My face was swollen from crying. But I felt empty. Hollow. Like grief had scooped out everything inside me and left just a shell. I walked back to my car, put the sign carefully in the back seat, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. I couldn't go home. Couldn't face the empty house, the empty bed, the empty life. So I just sat there, in the darkness, staring at the cottage Richard built. The cottage I was losing. The cottage that held every dream we'd ever had. And I thought about Lisa. My baby girl. The child I'd carried and birthed and loved with every cell of my being. How had we gotten here? How had the little girl who used to crawl into my lap and say, "I love you, Mommy," turned into the woman who could sell her father's legacy without even telling me? Daniel. That's how. Daniel with his smooth words and big plans and complete lack of respect for anything that didn't serve his ambitions. He'd gotten into her head, twisted her priorities, made her believe that their future was more important than our past. And maybe I was angry at Lisa. God knows I was furious, betrayed, devastated beyond words. But I was also heartbroken for her. Because she'd lost something too. She'd lost her integrity. Her connection to her father. Her soul, maybe. And for what? For Daniel's dream of London? For a bigger paycheck? For a life that would never make her happy because it was built on betrayal? I finally started the car and drove home. Not because I wanted to. But because I didn't know what else to do. The next morning, I woke up with that awful moment of forgetting again. For just 1 second, I didn't remember. And then it all came crashing back. Richard was dead. The cottage was sold. Lisa was a stranger. I stayed in bed. What was the point of getting up? What was the point of anything? But around 10 o'clock, the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Some stubborn refusal to completely give up on life, maybe. Some tiny spark of survival instinct. Hello? Mrs. Bennet? A man's voice. Hesitant. Unsure. Yes? This is Carl from Heritage Realty. I think there's been a misunderstanding. About your husband's cottage. You need to come to my office. Today, if possible. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. I felt it skip, felt the world tilt. What do you mean by a misunderstanding? It's better if I show you in person. Can you come this afternoon? Say, 2 o'clock? What's this about? Is the sale not final? Can I? Mrs. Bennet. His voice was firm now. Your husband left something behind in that cottage. Something important. You really need to come. Left something behind. What could he possibly mean? Richard had been meticulous. He'd planned everything, organized everything. What could he have left behind? I'll be there, I said. I hung up and sat there, my mind racing. What was this? Some kind of trick? Was Lisa behind this somehow? Or Daniel? But the man had sounded genuine. Concerned, even. And he'd mentioned Richard specifically. Not the property. Not the sale. Richard. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Just a tiny flicker, barely alive, but it was there. I got dressed. Actually showered, put on clean clothes, brushed my hair. Not because I cared how I looked, but because I needed to be presentable for whatever this was. I needed to be strong. Heritage Realty was in town, in one of those old brick buildings downtown. I'd passed it 1,000 times but never been inside. Richard had handled all the real estate dealings for the cottage. I'd signed papers when he asked me to, but he'd been the one meeting with agents and dealers and county clerks. Carl was maybe 50, with kind eyes and tired shoulders. He stood up when I came in, shook my hand, and offered me coffee that I declined. "Mrs. Bennet, thank you for coming so quickly." He gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down." I sat. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against my thighs to make them stop. "You said my husband left something behind?" Carl nodded slowly. "I need to explain something first. Your husband. Richard, he was a client of mine for over 20 years. Not just for the cottage, but for other investments as well." Other investments? What was he talking about? I don't understand. Richard was a very smart man. Very careful. He bought that land for the cottage, yes, but over the years, he made several other small property purchases through me. A cabin up north. A piece of farmland he leased out. Some investments that generated steady income. My head was spinning. I didn't know about any of this. He wanted it to be a surprise. For your retirement. He was planning to tell you everything once he stopped working, once you moved to the cottage full-time. He wanted to present it all to you as a gift. Financial security, passive income, assets for your daughter to inherit someday. Tears were streaming down my face again. Of course Richard had done this. Of course he'd been planning and preparing and taking care of me even when I didn't know it. That was who he was. That was the man I'd married. But then he died, Carl continued quietly. And in the confusion, I think some people didn't realize these properties existed. Or maybe they knew and chose not to disclose them. Lisa, I whispered. You mean Lisa and Daniel? Carl's face tightened. Your son-in-law contacted me about 6 months ago. Right after Richard died. He said he was helping you sort through Richard's affairs. He asked a lot of questions about the cottage and the other properties. Very specific questions about values, about how quickly they could be sold, about who had the authority to sell them. My hands clenched into fists. And you told him? Some of it, yes. I thought he was helping you. I thought you knew about all this and had sent him to get information. I had no idea. He trailed off, looking genuinely distressed. Mrs. Bennet, I'm so sorry. If I'd known this was happening without your knowledge, I would have called you immediately. It's not your fault, I said, even though I wanted to scream, wanted to blame someone, anyone for this nightmare. You didn't know. The thing is, Carl said slowly, pulling out a file folder, Richard made very specific arrangements. He told me, more than once, that if anything ever happened to him, I was to contact you directly before signing any transfer paperwork. He was very clear about that. Said he didn't trust anyone else to handle it properly. But you processed the cottage sale anyway. Carl winced. That's the part I'm ashamed of. Your daughter presented me with power of attorney documents. Legal documents, notarized, everything in order. She said you'd given her permission to sell the cottage. She said you were too emotional to handle it yourself, that you'd asked her to take care of it. Of course she'd said that. Of course she'd lied. She even brought her husband to the meeting. He had this whole pitch about how the proceeds would be used to get you into a smaller place, something easier to maintain. He made it sound like he was doing you a favor. Like this was all for your benefit. I wanted to vomit. The betrayal just kept getting deeper, kept cutting into me. So I processed it, Carl said. I went against my better judgment, against Richard's specific instructions, and I processed the sale. But something felt wrong. It kept nagging at me. So yesterday, I went out to the cottage one last time before the new owners took possession. I wanted to do a final walkthrough. Make sure everything is in order. And I found something Richard left behind. Something hidden. My breath caught. What? Carl stood up. Come with me. My car is out back. We need to go to the cottage. The drive felt endless. Carl tried to make small talk, but I couldn't focus. My mind was racing with possibilities. What had Richard hidden? Why had he hidden it? And why was Carl being so mysterious? When we pulled up to the cottage, my chest tightened. This might be the last time I ever saw it. The new owners were supposed to take possession in 3 days. 3 days, and then it would be gone forever. Carl led me inside. The cottage was empty, we'd never fully furnished it since we'd never moved in. Our plan had been to do that slowly, together, once Richard retired. Another dream that never came true. This way, Carl said, leading me to the back room. Richard's study. The room where he'd planned to read and work on hobbies and just exist in peace. Carl walked to the fireplace. It was beautiful, stone and mortar, built by Richard's hands like everything else. He'd been so proud of it. Richard hid something here, Carl said. He pressed on one of the stones, and a panel swung open. A secret compartment. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Inside the hidden space was a wooden box, a folder, and an envelope with my name on it in Richard's handwriting. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was seeing. I'll wait outside, Carl said quietly. Take your time. He left, closing the door behind him, and I was alone with my husband's final words. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope. It was sealed. The paper was thick, expensive. Richard had chosen it carefully. Even in death, even in secret, he'd been thoughtful. I broke the seal and pulled out the letter. My dearest Felicia, it began, and I started crying immediately. His handwriting. His words. Him. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry, my love. I'm sorry I'm not there to hold you, to comfort you, to grow old with you like we planned. I'm sorry for every missed sunset, every empty chair, every moment of loneliness you'll face without me. But I want you to know something. I may be gone, but I'm still taking care of you. I've always taken care of you, haven't I? That's what husbands do. That's what love means. Inside this box, you'll find deeds to several properties I purchased over the years. Some you know about, some you don't. They're all in your name now. They're all yours. The cabin up north, the farmland, a few other small investments. Together, they generate enough income for you to live comfortably. Do not worry. To be okay. But Felicia, I need to warn you about something. Daniel has been asking questions. Lots of questions. About the cottage, about my finances, about what Lisa stands to inherit. I don't trust him. I've tried to tell myself I'm being paranoid, being an overprotective father, but my gut tells me he's up to something. He wants what I've built. He sees it as money, as opportunity, as something to exploit. He doesn't understand that it's love. That every board in this cottage, every acre of that farmland, every single thing I've worked for was about loving you and Lisa. About building something that lasts. If Daniel tries to sell anything without your consent, stop him. The dealer, Carl, is a good man. He has instructions to contact you directly if anyone tries to move these properties. Don't let Daniel or even Lisa pressure you into giving up what we built together. This cottage, this land, these properties, they're your security. Your safety net. Your proof that I loved you more than anything in this world. I know you're hurting right now. I know you feel alone. But you're not alone, my darling. I'm still here. In every board of this cottage, in every memory we made, in the life we built together. Please take care of yourself. Please don't give up. Please know that loving you was the greatest joy of my life. Forever yours, Richard. If Lisa is reading this with you, and if she's been the daughter I raised her to be, then I'm proud of her. I'm proud of both of you. But if something has gone wrong, if Daniel has poisoned her somehow, then Lisa, listen to your father one more time, your mother comes first. Always. This is not negotiable. This is not a suggestion. Protect your mother the way I would have protected her. Be the woman we raised you to be. I don't know how long I sat there, holding that letter, crying so hard I couldn't see. Richard had known. He'd known something was wrong with Daniel. He'd known to protect me even after death. And he'd done it. Even from the grave, my husband was still taking care of me. I opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were deeds. Official documents. Property titles, all in my name. The cabin, I'd been there once, years ago. I'd forgotten Richard had bought it. The farmland, leased to a local farmer, generating monthly income. Other small properties, investments I knew nothing about. He'd built me a fortress. A financial fortress to protect me after he was gone. And Lisa had tried to tear it down. I gathered everything, the letter, the deeds, the documents, and walked outside. Carl was leaning against his car, looking worried. Did you find everything? He asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mrs. Bennet, there's something else you need to know. Carl's face was grave. When Daniel came to me 6 months ago, he didn't just ask about the cottage. He asked about all of Richard's properties. Specifically, he wanted to know if they could be sold quickly, as a package deal. He had a buyer lined up. Someone who invests in rural properties. My stomach dropped. He was planning to sell everything. Yes. And he would have, if I'd given him the information he wanted. But something stopped me. Richard's voice in my head, maybe, telling me to protect you. So I told Daniel I'd have to verify everything with you first. He got angry. Said I was being difficult, that the power of attorney gave Lisa full authority to handle your affairs. But it doesn't, I said. The power of attorney was for medical decisions and emergency situations. Not for selling property. Carl nodded. I looked into it after they left. He was trying to intimidate me, to make me think he had more authority than he did. The cottage sale went through because I believed Lisa when she said you'd agreed to it. But if I'd known the truth, if I'd followed Richard's instructions and called you first. It's not your fault, I said again. But inside, I was burning with rage. Daniel hadn't just convinced Lisa to sell the cottage. He'd tried to liquidate everything. Everything Richard had built, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd left to protect me. What do I do now? I asked. The cottage sale is already done. The new owners. Actually, Carl interrupted, that's why I called you so urgently. The sale hasn't closed yet. The new buyers are supposed to do a final walkthrough tomorrow and sign the closing documents the day after. But there's a clause in the contract. If there are any undisclosed liens or ownership disputes, the sale can be voided. Is there an ownership dispute? There is now, Carl said firmly. I've documented everything. The fact that you weren't properly informed, that the power of attorney was misused, that Richard had specific instructions that weren't followed. If you want to fight this, Mrs. Bennet, I'll help you. I'll testify that I acted on false information. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Hope surged through me. Real hope this time, not just a flicker. You'd do that? Richard was a good man. He trusted me to take care of his wife if anything happened to him. I failed him once. I won't fail him again. I wanted to hug this stranger, this dealer who'd known my husband better than I'd realized. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be messy. Your daughter isn't going to be happy. And her husband. Carl's face darkened. Daniel is going to fight hard. He needs that money for his UK move. He's probably already spent it in his mind. Good. Let him fight. Let him show his true colors. Let Lisa see exactly who she'd married. I don't care, I said. I want my husband's cottage back. I want everything back. Carl smiled. Then let's get started. The next 24 hours were a blur of phone calls and lawyer consultations and document reviews. Carl connected me with an attorney who specialized in elder exploitation and power of attorney abuse. Turns out, what Lisa and Daniel had done wasn't just morally wrong, it was potentially illegal. They misrepresented your consent, the lawyer explained. They used legal documents meant for emergency medical situations to conduct major financial transactions without your knowledge. That's abuse of power of attorney. We can absolutely fight this. I called Lisa. Not to yell this time. Not to scream or rage. To inform her. She answered on the first ring. Mom? I've been trying to call you. The cottage sale is being contested, I said calmly. I've hired a lawyer. I have evidence that you misused the power of attorney and sold my property without my consent. Silence. Mom, wait. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Lisa. You lied to the dealer. You told him I'd agreed to the sale. You used legal documents your father gave you for emergencies to steal my home. It wasn't stealing. I was trying to help. Help? You were helping yourself. You and Daniel needed money for London, so you took it. From your dead father's legacy. From your mother's security. That's not fair. Lisa. My voice was ice. I found your father's letter. I found the hidden deeds. I know about all the properties he left me. And I know Daniel tried to sell those too. The silence was longer this time. Heavier. I didn't know about those, she said finally. Her voice was small. Scared. Maybe you didn't. But Daniel did. He knew, and he tried to convince the dealer to sell everything without my knowledge. Your husband wasn't just helping you relocate, Lisa. He was trying to liquidate your father's entire legacy. No. That's not, he wouldn't. But her voice lacked conviction. I could hear the doubt creeping in. The terrible realization that maybe, just maybe, she didn't know her husband as well as she thought. The sale is being voided, I continued. My lawyer is filing an injunction today. The cottage stays mine. All of it stays mine. Everything your father built for me. Mom, please. We can talk about this. We can work something out. No, we can't. Because I don't trust you anymore, Lisa. I don't trust you to put family first. I don't trust you to honor your father's memory. And I certainly don't trust your husband. Mom. Don't call me again until you're ready to tell me the truth. The whole truth. About what Daniel wanted, about what you knew, about why you thought it was acceptable to betray me like this. I hung up. My hands were steady this time. My voice hadn't shaken. Because I wasn't just angry anymore. I was resolved. I was done being a victim. Done being the grieving widow who could be manipulated and lied to. Richard had left me more than properties. He'd left me strength. He'd left me proof that I was worth protecting, worth fighting for. And I was going to honor that. The injunction was granted within 48 hours. The sale was halted. The new buyers were understandably upset, they'd done nothing wrong, after all, but Carl worked with them, explained the situation, even helped them find another property. They were decent people. They understood. Lisa didn't call back. Not for 3 days. And when she finally did, her voice was different. Broken. Mom, I need to tell you something. I waited. I found emails. Between Daniel and that property investor Carl mentioned. They'd been talking for months. Since right after Dad died. Daniel was planning, he was planning to sell everything. The cottage, the farmland, the cabin. All of it. He told the investor he could get it all for below market value because his grieving mother-in-law didn't understand property values. Each word was a knife. Not because it surprised me, I already knew Daniel was a snake, but because it confirmed my daughter had been sleeping next to a man who thought so little of me. Of us. Of everything we were. I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't know the extent of it. He told me the cottage was costing you money, that you couldn't afford to maintain it, that we were helping you by selling it. He said the proceeds would go into a trust for you. He made it sound like we were being responsible. And you believed him, I said flatly. She started crying. I wanted to believe him. He was my husband. I thought we were building a life together. I thought we were a team. You were supposed to be on my team, Lisa. I'm your mother. Richard was your father. We were your team first. I know. Her voice broke completely. I know, and I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I chose him over you. I'm so sorry I let him manipulate me. I'm so sorry I didn't see what he was doing until it was almost too late. Almost. That word hung between us. What happens now? I asked. I'm leaving him, Lisa said. I already told him. He's furious. Threatening to sue me, to take half of everything I own. But I don't care. I'm done, Mom. I'm done with the lies and the manipulation and the person I was becoming because of him. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. Wanted to remind her that I'd warned her, that I'd seen through Daniel's charm from the beginning. But that wasn't what she needed to hear. That wasn't what would heal us. Come home, I said instead. Come home and we'll figure this out together. She sobbed harder. You want me to come home? After everything I did? You're my daughter, Lisa. I'm furious with you. I'm hurt and betrayed and I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again. But you're my daughter. And your father would want me to help you. I don't deserve. No, you don't. But that's not how family works. We don't get what we deserve. We get second chances. We get forgiveness we haven't earned. We get loved even when we're unlovable. She cried. I cried. And for the first time in weeks, the tears felt like release instead of drowning. Lisa moved back 2 weeks later. Not into my house, that felt too soon, too much. But she rented a small apartment in town. Close enough to visit. Close enough to start rebuilding. Daniel fought the divorce. Of course he did. He fought for spousal support, for half of Lisa's assets, for anything he could squeeze out of the wreckage of their marriage. But Lisa fought harder. She documented everything, the emails, the phone calls with the investor, the attempts to manipulate me. Her lawyer painted a picture of financial abuse and exploitation that made Daniel look exactly like what he was, a con man. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Daniel got nothing except a one-way ticket back to wherever he came from. Good riddance. But the real healing started with the cottage. Lisa came to me one Saturday morning, looking nervous. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask this. But can I help? Can I help restore the cottage? I know I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can help finish what Dad started." I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She'd lost weight. She had circles under her eyes. She looked older, sadder, humbler. She looked like someone who'd been through hell and barely made it out. She looked like she needed this as much as I did. "Yes," I said. "Yes, you can help." We started the next weekend. It was spring now, almost a year since Richard died. The cottage needed work, not structural work, because Richard had built it too well for that, but cosmetic updates. Paint. Repairs. The kind of maintenance that comes from a house sitting empty for too long. Lisa showed up in old jeans and one of Richard's work shirts she'd found in the garage. She looked so much like him at that moment that I had to turn away to hide my tears. We painted. We cleaned. We planted flowers in the garden Richard had laid out but never filled. We hung curtains and arranged furniture and slowly, painfully, brought life back to the cottage. And we talked. God, we talked. About Richard, about the mistakes we'd both made, about Daniel and betrayal and forgiveness. About what it means to be a family. "I thought I had to choose," Lisa said one day. We were painting the porch, the blue paint bright against the weathered wood. "I thought being married meant putting Daniel first. Always. Above everyone and everything. Marriage is important," I said carefully. "But it doesn't mean betraying yourself. Or your family. Real love doesn't ask you to choose. Real love makes room for everyone." She was quiet for a long time. "Then, Dad made room for everyone, didn't he? He built this cottage for you, but he always talked about me bringing my family here. About grandkids playing in that creek. He never made it us versus them. It was just us. All of us. That's who your father was," I said. "He knew what mattered. And it wasn't money or opportunities or moving to London. It was this. This moment. Us together, doing something that matters, building something that lasts." Lisa started crying. "I miss him so much, Mom." "Me too, baby. Me too." We held each other on that porch, surrounded by paint cans and drop cloths and the ghost of the man we both loved. And slowly, painfully, we started to heal. It took 6 months to fully restore the cottage. 6 months of weekends and phone calls and slowly rebuilding not just a house, but a relationship. Lisa and I would never be what we were before. That innocent, unquestioning trust was gone. But we were building something new. Something harder earned and maybe more real. On the anniversary of Richard's death, we held a small ceremony at the cottage. Just Lisa and me. We planted a tree, an oak sapling, because Richard had loved the old oaks on the property. We stood there as the sun set, watching the shadows lengthen across the land he'd loved. "I brought something," Lisa said quietly. She pulled out a small tin box. The one from the hidden compartment. I'd looked inside it once, months ago, but hadn't had the strength to really examine it. Now, together, we opened it. Inside was a photo. Richard and Lisa, when she was maybe 5 years old. He was holding her on his shoulders, both of them grinning at the camera. And underneath, in Richard's handwriting, a note. My two girls. My whole world. If you're reading this together, you've found your way back to each other. That's all I ever wanted. That's all that matters. Take care of each other. The cottage is just wood and nails, but love is what builds a real home. Love, Dad. Lisa broke down completely. He knew. Even then, he knew we might fight. He knew we might drift apart. And he left us a way back to each other. I held my daughter while she cried. He was smart like that. Always thinking ahead. Always protecting us. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I almost destroyed this. I'm so sorry I almost destroyed us. I know, sweetheart. I know. We stayed at the cottage that night. Slept in sleeping bags on the floor like campers, because it felt right somehow. Like we were starting over. Like we were finally, truly home. In the morning, we made coffee on the little stove Richard had installed. We sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun rise over the hills. So what now? Lisa asked. Are you going to move here? Live here full-time like you and Dad planned? I'd been thinking about that. I don't know. Part of me wants to. But part of me thinks maybe that's not the point anymore. What do you mean? Your father built this cottage as a dream for our future. But that future didn't happen. Not the way we planned. Maybe the cottage doesn't have to be what it was supposed to be. Maybe it can be something new. Like what? I looked at my daughter. At the woman she was becoming after everything she'd been through. Maybe it's a place for new beginnings. For second chances. For people who need to remember what matters. Lisa smiled. Dad would like that. Yeah, I agreed. He would. So that's what we did. We didn't sell the cottage, God, no. Never again. But we didn't let it sit empty either. We opened it up to family gatherings. To friends who needed a weekend away. To anyone who needs to be reminded that love builds things that last. Lisa started coming every weekend. Sometimes with me, sometimes alone. She'd work in the garden, paint the shutters, and maintain what Richard had built. She'd bring dates sometimes, good men this time, men who respected what the cottage meant, who understood they were being trusted with something precious. I visited too, though not as often. The cottage held too many memories, too much pain. But slowly, over time, the pain faded and the memories became sweet instead of bitter. I could sit on that porch and remember Richard without sobbing. I could walk through rooms he'd built and feel grateful instead of devastated. The other properties Richard left me, the cabin, the farmland, provided income just like he'd planned. Enough for me to live comfortably. Enough to help Lisa when she needed it. Enough to donate to causes Richard cared about. He'd taken care of me even from the grave, just like he'd promised. And Daniel? I heard through mutual friends that he never made it to London. Turns out his big opportunity was mostly hot air and ego. Last I heard, he was back where he started, working the same kind of job he'd been so desperate to escape. Karma, maybe. Or just the universe reminding him that you can't build anything real on betrayal. 3 years after Richard died, Lisa met someone new. A teacher named Marcus, quiet and kind, who reminded me so much of Richard it made my heart ache. He loved the cottage immediately. Understood its significance. Treated it, and Lisa, with the respect they deserved. They got married at the cottage. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lisa wore Richard's mother's wedding ring, the one I'd saved for her. Marcus said his vows standing under the oak tree we'd planted on Richard's anniversary. And in that moment, watching my daughter marry a good man in the place her father built, I felt Richard there. I felt his approval, his joy, his peace. The cottage that almost tore us apart had brought us back together. Had given us a second chance. Had proven that love really does build things that last. So that's my story. My name is Felicia, and I'm 60 years old, and my daughter tried to sell my late husband's cottage for her own selfish reasons. But my husband's love protected me even after death. His careful planning, his hidden letter, his determination to take care of me, all of it saved not just the cottage, but my relationship with my daughter. Would I have forgiven her if she hadn't shown remorse? If she'd stayed with Daniel? If she'd never acknowledged what she'd done? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some wounds don't heal. But she did come back. She did the work. She rebuilt what she'd broken, brick by brick, just like her father taught her. And maybe that's the real lesson here: it's never too late to come home. It's never too late to honor the people who loved you. It's never too late to build something that matters. The cottage still stands. The sign Richard painted, the Bennett Cottage, built with love, still hangs by the door. And every time I see it, I'm reminded that love doesn't die. It transforms. It adapts. It finds new ways to protect us, to guide us, to bring us home. Richard built that cottage for our retirement, for our golden years, for a future we never got to have. But in the end, he built something even more important. He built a legacy. A reminder. A foundation strong enough to survive betrayal and grief and the worst that life could throw at us. He built proof that real love, the kind that lays bricks and plants gardens and hides letters in secret compartments, never really dies. It just changes form. It becomes the courage to fight back. The wisdom to forgive. The strength to rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, that's the greatest gift he could have given me. Not the cottage itself, but what it represents. The knowledge that I was loved that much. That someone thought I was worth protecting. That even death couldn't stop him from taking care of me. So would you have forgiven your child for selling something that precious? For betraying not just you, but everything your family stood for? Would you have let them back in? Giving them a second chance? I did. Because at the end of the day, that's what love does. It forgives the unforgivable. It builds bridges where there should only be walls. It creates second chances and third chances and as many chances as it takes. Just like Richard forgave me for every time I doubted his dream. For every time I questioned whether the cottage was worth the sacrifice. He forgave me, and he kept building anyway. I kept creating something beautiful anyway. Kept loving me anyway. So I forgave Lisa. Not because she deserved it. But because that's what you do when you love someone. You build bridges. You create chances. You prove that love is stronger than betrayal, deeper than hurt, more lasting than any cottage or property or material thing. The cottage Richard built is made of wood and stone. But the real home he built, the one that shelters me even now, is made of love. And that's the kind of thing that never gets sold. Never gets taken away. Never dies. That's what matters. That's what lasts. That's what I want you to remember when you face your own betrayals, your own grief, your own impossible choices. Love builds things that last. Even when it hurts. Even when it costs everything. Even when death itself tries to tear it down. Love builds things that last. And that's my story. That's my truth. That's what my husband taught me, and what I'll carry with me until the day I join him in whatever comes next. Let me know in the comments, would you have fought for what was yours? Would you have forgiven? Would you have found the strength to rebuild? And please, like and subscribe, because every story like mine proves that our best chapters can still begin at any age. That it's never too late for justice. Never too late for healing. Never too late to honor the ones who loved us most. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reminding me that I'm not alone in this grief, this fight, this journey back to wholeness. My name is Felicia. I'm 60 years old. And my husband's love still protects me, even now. Even always.